Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donahue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy. Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donahue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. And as somebody noticed, I think it was on Twitter, they said, if it's an old-time creep, it's usually Margot. I don't think it's old-timey if it's 50 years ago, but I'm kind of a history geek, so...
I get what they're saying. I get what you're saying.
I get what you're saying.
I tend to like modern Hollywood creeps, and Margot tends to like historical creeps. So I get it.
It's a balance. We have like
a balance.
It's a balance.
That's why we're a good team.
That's why we are an excellent team. And there's so many themes here that we could talk about, and we will talk about, that are resonant today. We are talking about Stockholm Syndrome, or Sonia, I've been working on my Swedish. Normal stork. Oh boy, this is going to be rough, but we'll do it together. We are on Facebook. We have a basic Facebook page, and that's where you find out that people go there to complain about our foul language. Yes, we use salty language in this program. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Deal with it.
We have a private Facebook group. You do have to answer 3 questions and promise not to be an asshole in order to join the group. We just talked about creeps, like we said, in the past and the present. We talk about pop culture and all kinds of stuff. We share pictures of our pets on there.
Yeah, it's the best group on Facebook. It's the only reason I go on Facebook.
True that. We're on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for 10 years and never used it.
Creep!
And we're on Instagram, What a Creep Podcast. Please follow us there. And we have an old-timey email, What a Creep Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. Send us your suggestions for creeps, also non-creeps. All that's really helpful. Let us know where you listen to the show when you listen to us. We find that really fun. Some of you have been reaching out with that lately, and it's really, really cool. Also, if you would like some stickers, getting a new batch of stickers next week.
Ooh.
So let me know. You send us an email, and wherever you are in the planet of Earth, I will get them out to you. You know, like Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie. Wherever you are, I'll come and get you. Does he use an Irish accent?
I will find you. Just stay alive, no matter what occurs.
Hang
I will
around
find
your
you.
post box.
It's The Last of the Mohicans, and it's one of my faves.
That's a good movie.
I love it.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I've always loved him.
Yes, it's a delight.
Wanna...
delight's the wrong word. It's good.
It's a romp.
It's hilarious.
Do you want to tell them about the website? The website.
Yes, it's at whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our podcast, but we're afraid to ask. It has links to all of our past episodes, and in those episode descriptions are also our show notes, where we link to all of our sources, because we source everything, and we want to give credit where credit is due. We want credit where credit is due. They did the dirty work. We're just putting it all together for you. So check that out. And there's also a link to our merch shop where you can get t-shirts and tote bags and journals and all kinds of awesome stuff. Someone in the Facebook group recently posted that she had worn her old shirt out like the logo was like faded, and so she ordered a new one, and I was like, amazing. So you could do that. Those shirts are super comfortable, by the way. My son loves wearing his. He says it's so soft. Also, there's a link to our Patreon page. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, I do. We put our first 5 seasons of shows on that Patreon wall. That's when we first started out just a little over 2 years ago. We also put out 2 bonus episodes a month, and then we put out a newsletter every month. We're going to get a next one out this weekend.
It's coming this weekend. Check your inboxes.
And it just helps us pay for just the costs of putting the show together, getting the books and the movies and the newsletters.
Paying for those sources.
Paying for our sources, and then stuff like sound equipment and shit like that. So all of you that support us there, thank you so much. I want to say thank you this week to Hattie and Shannon for joining us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Just want to let you know, wherever you get your podcasts, if you could please be sure to subscribe. And if you could leave us a review or stars, whatever they ask you to do, that'd be amazing. And I want to give a special shout out for someone who gave us 5-star review in iTunes.
Thank you.
Autumn sustained an injury last year, and it's been taking a while to heal. Girl, same.
We've been there.
We have both been there. We know what recovery is like, and it's not for wimps.
Yes.
So, we're in your corner. We're rooting for you, and we're glad to keep you company.
So happy that we could be there for you.
All right. So I think that is everything.
I think so.
All right. So I'm going to read a bit of my script. And once again, if you're new to the show, one of us comes up with a creep and the other one is then challenged to come up with a non-creep to kind of balance out the creepiness so you don't leave feeling desperate and terrible. Also, we like to say that we give like a high viewpoint of this. We're going way up in the sky and looking down.
Yes.
We get a little granular with some details, but I can't say everything that happened.
Yes.
It would take as long as the kidnapping that I'm talking about today.
Yes. Also, that's why we link to the sources. If you want to do a deeper dive, you absolutely should check out the sources that we use. That's why another reason why we want to give them credit.
All right, Sonia, first question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what Stockholm Syndrome is?
I think I do. And the first time I heard about it was when Patty Hearst.
That was in the 70s, right?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
It's a syndrome that's never been proven. It's a psychological diagnosis that's never been proven. It's just one of those things that, and let me just say, it's also been under the banners of battered women's syndrome, learned helplessness, codependency, trauma bonding, reenactment of trauma, repetition compulsion, women choosing abusive men. All of this is under the concept of Stockholm Syndrome, which is when someone appears to be bonding with their abuser. And we'll talk about the origins of this, frankly, fakakta theory. Ask your favorite Jewish person what that means. But let me get into this. First, I just want to give a little bit of background. The Vietnam War is still raging. Because fuck Nixon and all that's going on.
Fuck that guy.
Fuck him. He's definitely on the list. He's another one that would have to be. It would just going to have to be a few parts, or we just have to pick a year with Nixon.
Yeah, a year or super high level. That's right, Max. Fuck that guy.
Fuck him. There was the Black September 1972 Olympics, where the entire wrestling team from Israel was kidnapped and murdered.
Oh my God, that story's. There's a whole documentary about it. The documentary is just
Heartbreaking.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Heartbreaking, also amazing.
There was the IRA in Northern Ireland. There was the Weather Underground. There was the PLO. There was also in 1974, a year after what we're talking about today, Patty Hearst's kidnapping by the SLA. Let's talk now about Sweden in 1973. It's not a very violent place. It's actually pretty mellow. They've had socialist policies for a very long time. They are ruled by a king, but they also have a prime minister. People have niceties. They have health care and they have child care, and English is taught in every school along with Swedish. It's a nice life. I mean, this is my head. They're all blonde and beautiful and say, yeah.
They're all listening to ABBA all the time.
Exactly. I want to first start by saying I've been practicing, but I may screw up. I really don't mean to be offensive.
Hey,
that's
my thing. That's my thing.
On Thursday, August 23rd, 1973, a convicted felon, Jan Erik Ollson, entered the Kreditbanken Bank in Stockholm, Sweden. Technically, it was the Normal Strong.
Oh, boy. Ooh.
He
wow.
was wearing a wig. He painted his eyebrows black, pulls out a submachine gun, and yelled in English with an American accent, "The party has begun!" He knows how to make an entrance.
Sounds terrible. Sounds terrible.
It's in the morning. It's a Thursday morning. It's like 10 a.m. There's people working at the bank, and there's people there just depositing shit. Mm-hmm. He fires several shots in the ceiling, and he announces that this is a robbery and ordered people to the ground. A silent alarm alerted the police. They did not have guards at the door. They just had an alarm that would go right to the police station. 2 officers showed up. One of them was unarmed. Ollson shot one of the officers in the hand, while he ordered the other one to sit in a chair and then sing a song to entertain everybody while he took his hostages into the vault. That song was Lonesome Cowboy, just in case you're wondering. I don't know.
Of course
either.
I was.
6 days later, the entire group that now included convicted criminal Clark Ollson, yes, we have an Ollson and Ollson,
Okay.
came out of the bank scared, dehydrated, and fearing for their lives. They were all scared of the cops. And the kidnap victims had so much sympathy that they hugged their captors before being taken to the hospital. All refused to testify against the kidnappers and said they felt more terrified of being harmed by the police than by the criminals who held them at gunpoint for several days.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
The term Stockholm Syndrome, or more accurately, Normal Strong Syndrome, was created by Nils Bergerud. He's dead. He's a criminologist and a psychiatrist who theorized that victims come to love their kidnappers as a coping mechanism. This would also be the basis of other labels that pathologize and often discredit victims, like trauma bonding or trauma, according to Jaycee Lee Curtis. Is where I put that clip.
Trauma.
Trauma. She pronounces it like 12 different ways. It's hilarious. Anyway, battered wife syndrome, like I mentioned, and why women seem to pick abusive men. This is like this reason.
Yes.
Over the years, the bank heist and kidnapping situation had been revisited and revised to show a more complete picture of what happened in those 6 days and why Stockholm Syndrome might be a false theory. In short, it's a creepy diagnosis meant to show women how weak they are under pressure. And I think this is total bullshit.
All right. Let's get into it.
Giddy up, y'all. These are our sources, and like Sonia says, they're all in our show notes. And if you tap the artwork or whatever on your phone, if you're listening there, you should be able to access them. There's the Mary Sue. There's a YouTube QXIR, an Inside Edition segment, Crying Out for Justice blog. Dr. Alan Wade, who's doing amazing work up in Canada, Rethinking Stockholm Syndrome. I have a YouTube clip from him. He's also working with Indigenous people up there, dealing with the trauma of the heritage schools that we talked about last year, all about that. Steadafan.com, The Independent, TodayIFoundOut.com, Business Insider, Vogue Scandinavia. There's a show on Netflix last year called Clark, starring the Skarsgård that was Pennywise the Clown.
Alexander Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. Of course, Clark Olofsson's Wikipedia. There's the Memory Motel podcast, History.com. There's the History of Stockholm Syndrome on a PDF that I've included. Reason-Based Practice, Collider, BBC, Criminal Podcast, The New Yorker. This is an article that appeared 1974, and it's like 25,000 words. It's unbelievable how long magazine articles were back then. Finally, 6 Days in August, The Story of the Stockholm Syndrome, which is a book by David King.
You did no research.
I didn't do jack shit. I want to give trigger warnings. I think I've mentioned it, but kidnapping, gun violence, mentions of other kinds of trauma that we've mentioned before, but there's nothing you'll see. And Margot's bad pronunciations. I'm apologizing now.
I feel like you're stepping on my thing, but that's fine.
So our villains are Jan Erik Ollson, born 1941, and Clark Olofsson, born 1947. Jan goes into a bank and says, "Party's begun. Let's do this shit." And so he gets some of his he captures 4 people, and there's a bunch of people that are on the floor that are afraid to move. And this goes on for hours. And he puts them in the bank vault because he figures that place they could hang out, that's soundproof. It's a little bit safer. But they pretty much had the bank themselves. And so the cops come in. He shoots one of them in the hand, and he scares the shit out of the other one. And he's like, "I've got demands, and you got to meet my demands." After a while, the cops are like, "All right, what are your demands?" And now I'm thinking of Airheads, where they ask for like the cottage cheese and the football and nude B. Arthur pictures. But he says, no, I want money. I want $70,000. I want a souped up car full of gas. I want guns. I want bulletproof vests. I want to leave with the hostages. And I need you to bring me Clark Ollson. Who's this, you say? This is the Skarsgård person that they play. Clark Ollson, once again, born 1947. They're all born in Sweden. One of the kidnap victims described him as Che Guevara meets Jesus. She had a crush right away. I will say this is a case where he's super fucking hot. I will admit this.
Okay.
Me likey. I would.
Well, Alexander Skarsgård. Oh, a very good-looking man.
It's a perfect choice.
All of them are. They all are.
Everybody in Sweden is. It's distracting. It's very distracting. Yes. All those Nordic people are whatever. But he was ridiculously handsome. He grew up in a home where there was a lot of trauma. Both his parents drank. His mother had a lot of mental illness issues. His dad died young of alcoholism. And he was one of the youngest. I mean, I think he was the only boy, but he was always super charming. He's very, very smart. And he could speak a few languages. He knew a lot about a lot of different things. And he just charmed people like just the living shit out of them. Liked bank robberies because you get some money and then you go out and you do whatever the hell you want.
Like Point Break.
Exactly like Point Break. And I guess Swedish prisons aren't so bad because they both were in one. And then they were like, once they get out, they're like, it's not enough of a deterrent,
Yeah. Well, it's fine. It's fine. I might have to go back.
So Clark and Jan become friends in prison. And Jan says, you got to bring in Clark to help me with the situation. And they said, fine, we'll send him in, but we're not going to give him guns. And he's like, that's cool. I got tons of guns. I don't need that. But okay. Clark,
I need more help in here with these hostages. Could you
give me someone from the prison who was in prison? These boys were both in prison, but this guy got out.
Interesting choice.
Yes. So Clark was still in prison. They had to go get him. Now, the cops, by the way, the first day, they thought that a man named Kaj Hansen was the person inside. They didn't know because the guy had changed his appearance with the black eyebrows and shit like that. And that guy was so upset because Swedish TV immediately was going like 24/7 live. Like they immediately showed up and surrounded the bank. And this guy that was on the run from the cops called the cops furiously and said, I'm not in that bank. I don't kidnap people. How dare you?
How dare you? That's not my thing. How dare you? I said good day.
I said good day, sir. So they picked him up and took him to jail. So Clark comes in and he starts singing the Roberta Flack song, Killing Me Softly. He's handsome. He's like early 70s sexy. What can I say?
Is it possible that none of these people have Stockholm Syndrome? They were just hot for him. I mean, he's a good-looking man. Yeah, singing.
Well, so he comes in singing, and he also he calls the cops and says, look, we're going to work with you, but you got to understand, these people need to eat. The women need their tampons. We need water. You need to take care of us. And then once I build that trust, I'll help you get this guy out. And they said, cool. So they bring them waters and foods and the menstruation products. And then they also send in beer. But the bottle caps to the beer, all of the beer was like slightly askew. So people are like, they poisoned this. And it turns out, the cops did try to poison them. I mean, this is the thing.
They poisoned it? What if the people drank it?
From the beginning, the cops had no clue how to take out the hostages. Their whole thing was, we hope we don't kill them, but we're just going to have to get aggressive. They said, we're not going to negotiate with these terrorists. So whatever they want, it was a very hard line attitude. Not smart.
No, because, anyway, yes.
Over time, it's hot. It's August. They're in this bank vault. He finds one other person. It's a dude. And I should say, by the way, our victims are Birgitta Lundblad, Elizabeth Oldgren, Christine Enmark. It says Kristen, but I think in Swedish it's Christine. I don't know. And then Sven Staffstrom. And then there's a guy named Bo Holstrom who's a reporter and was on site and was like this internationally known reporter. So he's like, hey, it's me, Bo.
So it's almost all women.
It's 3 guys and 3 women.
All right.
2 of them are kidnappers. One of them is a kidnap victim. And then there's 3 women.
Okay.
All blonde. Everyone's blonde. From the beginning, the kidnappers were actually pretty nice. They let them stand or sit. They gave them food. They let them call their families. And they were saying, we don't want to hurt you. We just want to get this money and get out. And the people are, and if you think to yourself, you're like, okay, just give them the money and let me go. Yeah, this money's insured. Who cares?
Yes.
Right? But the cops aren't thinking that way. The cops are being very aggressive. And they try to shoot their way into the place a few times. They basically become barricaded in the vault. It's not a big vault. And they go to the bathroom on these little waste paper baskets that are in the vault. And they're sleeping there. And they're hanging out there all the time. And gradually, over time, they get to know each other. And when they're talking to the people, they're kind of... and the cops put mics up, like, over the vault. To try to, like, listen in. And they're like, oh, they're joking with each other. They're, like, hanging out. And it's like, they're making conversation because none of them want to be there. They all want to go. But Jan, what Ollson and Olofsson want... they just want to be able to get the car with the kidnap victims, drive away, and then dump them off and then take off, right?
Yeah.
Police are like, no, we're not going to do that. And this became a very hardline attitude.
And as a kidnap victim, as one of those hostages, I'm sure you're not looking to, like, piss off the men with guns.
Well, I mean, why on earth would you irritate them?
I'll tell you right now, I'd probably be the nicest hostage you ever met. Please don't hurt me.
If I think you're not going to sexually assault me or just kill me, you just want to get your money and get the fuck out, I would be more relieved. And I would just be like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, they didn't have a SWAT team. They didn't have any idea, like, how to communicate, how to do anything. So the prime minister of Sweden is a man named Olof Palme. And Clark Olofsson calls him and says, look, I was brought in. Let's get this negotiation going. Let's do this. And Olof Palme says, get those people out of there. And, you're not going to we're not going to negotiate with you. And he gets really upset and hangs up and, like, shoots into the ceiling, and everybody gets upset. And then Christine, says, let me try talking to him. 23 years old. Just left home a year before. This is her first job. They put her through to the Prime Minister of Sweden. And she's like, what are you doing, buddy? We're struggling here. Like, just negotiate and get out. And her whole thing is like, let us go with them into the car, take off, and then they'll leave us alone. And the man's like, why aren't you going to the cops? And she's like, we're more scared of the cops than we are of them. Because every time one of them is by a window, the cops just start shooting in. Right? Yeah. So they're not taking into account.
You tried to poison us.
You've tried to poison them. They shoot into the building constantly. The cops, like, pour in. So now they're stuck inside this terrible bank vault. And they're there for days. And they're standing for hours. I mean, Jan, at one point, he takes all this rope and he makes these nooses to make it seem like they're wearing these nooses on their neck and they're attached to the wall. That's the picture.
Yeah.
That I sent to you. But the cops aren't doing anything. They're just like shooting the shit out of the place, and they're just waiting for them to fuck up.
No wonder they were scared of the police.
They were terrified of the police because the police never also said anything to them. Like,
right.
There's no communication. Like, hey, you're gonna be okay.
The cops are shooting up the joint. They're putting the beer bottles. Meanwhile, these guys are feeding them and just trying to get out of there.
They're like, we just want this money.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go. Like, I'd be like, just give them the fucking money. I remember my first job. I was at a Roy Rogers. And what do we do if we get robbed? They're like, give them the money.
It's not. Why would you try to be a hero? It's not my money. I don't care.
I don't give a fuck.
No, I totally don't give a shit.
And what's happening between Christine and Clark is there's some chemistry.
Oh.
Is it two-way? Clark likes everyone. He can't keep his dick in his pants. That's just,
Cool.
he's charming. He's like,
Clark.
you know, he's like the Brad Pitt of like kidnappers here. Like women are just kind of like, no, I'll hang out more. That's cool.
Yeah.
But he says like nice things to them. They both do. They both have moments where, and they're one of the women, Brigitta, excuse me, had two little girls at home, and she was really worried about them. And they were both very compassionate with her. Like, you'll be back to your daughters. Don't worry about it. We'll make sure. We just make sure the cops don't shoot at everybody. That they were all terrified the cops are going to just shoot everyone just to get to these two guys. That's what they're thinking. So in the middle of all this, once again, they're peeing in corners. The cops decide, you know what? No more negotiation. We're not going to send you food. We're not going to send you water. We're just going to wait for you to starve yourselves out of there.
Damn.
And the kidnappers, and then they got impatient with that policy, and they're starving. And so the kidnappers shared their food with them. Like they broke everything up 6 ways, and they did the best they could. So then all of a sudden they're sitting in this vault, and then they hear this horrible sound coming from above. The cops are creating holes in the ceiling. So they're drilling directly into this vault. And it's a thick concrete. It's this old building. It's thick concrete. So it's making noises that's just like anybody would be disturbed by it. And it's going on and on and on. And then finally the hole goes through. And then the cops are like shooting in. And so then Jan is shooting back up at the cops. And the cops are like, hey, you're shooting at us up here. Stop that. Like, I'm not kidding.
You're shooting at us.
Right. So then they have to watch this hole all the time. Like, so on top of everything else.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, people were calling the newspapers and TV stations and radio stations, and they're all trying to come up with ideas. Like, how do we get these people out? What are your ideas? And people are like, why don't we play the Salvation Army, put a band out, the Salvation Army, just play music really loud and just drive them crazy. Everybody had ideas. And then the cops started pouring in water from the ceiling into the room, not giving them water, pouring water. So then they started drinking the water from the floor because they were so dehydrated and sick.
Right.
And then the cops really got annoyed.
Well, what is their end game here if they're not trying to save the hostages?
It's just to take the kidnappers. It has nothing to do with the hostages.
It's just
no
so they
thought
can
of their
open.
safety.
It's just so they can open the bank back up. I guess.
Yeah.
Like we don't care. We don't care. We're not going to give you what you want. We're not going to save these people.
Right.
So.
Oh, and I forgot, Sonia. Thank you.
Yes.
Best part. When Christine is talking to Olof Palme, once again, he was the prime minister, by the way,
Prime
was
Minister.
assassinated in 1986. He said to her, well, you should have comfort with the fact that you have died at your post. And
Ew.
she said to him, I don't want to be a dead hero.
What do you mean died at my post? I work at a fucking bank.
That's what he thought. Well, you were at your job and you did the best job you could. So you should feel good about the fact that you died at your post. This is not someone who's a cop or signed up for the army or any kind of job where your life would be on the line.
Yes. Sonia died doing what she loves, content design in the office. Like, nobody. Fuck. You don't sign
Margot
up
loved marketing so much, she went down with that ship.
so stupid.
Yeah.
What a terrible thing to say to someone who's not serving in a capacity where that kind of thing is required, you know?
Right.
Again, not the police, not the army.
Not the prime minister.
Yeah.
She's
Fuck
like,
you.
She's like, who do we trust here?
That's so shitty.
The police, by the way, get so frustrated with all of this that then they come up with their most brilliant idea. Let's just tear gas these people. So they pour gas into the vault. An hour later, they're all sick and they're all like getting upset. Then they're screaming, get us out, get us out, get us out. And the cops are like, okay, send the victims first. Send out the victims first. And they're yelling back, no, we don't trust you that you're not going to shoot, because there's smoke everywhere. It's
Right.
chaos. So then they said, we have to come out with them. Like, we will go out right after them. So then Jan goes out, and then Clark comes out, and then the victims come out. And they put out they have like 4 different ambulances, and they have Christine was defiant when she says, I don't need to go to the hospital. I just want to go home and see my parents. And they said, no, you got to go to the hospital. You got to get on this gurney. She's like, fine. So she gets on the gurney and she's looking for Clark. By the way, they had some sort of romantic encounter. The details are kind of wonky. They've been, let's just say they found some DNA in there.
What? Oh my God. He's from prison. She's a bank teller. It's like,
They're in love.
well, they're in love.
The world's
They're
against
taking
them.
Their business. It's the new romantic comedy starring Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher.
She's on this gurney, and there are a lot of pictures of her, and she's adorable. Actually, she's not blonde. She's a brunette, but she's got this very short haircut, and she's sitting up. She refuses to lie back in the gurney.
Wow.
Because she's like, fuck y'all. Like, I'm not taking anybody's orders. And
I have never heard any of all of this is fascinating to me.
right.
Okay.
She gets to the hospital. Her parents meet her there, and it's really nice. Everyone gets to the hospital. They get reunited with their families. They're all like, well, is Clark okay? Is Jan okay? What's going to happen to them? And the cops are like, what are you talking about? These are your kidnappers. And they're like, well, yeah, but we want to make sure they're okay. Immediately, it's pathologized. Like, what is wrong with these people that they care more about? Because they gave them hugs as they left.
You're so shitty at your job being a cop. That's what happened here. That they are like more worried about
Being shot to death while they're
Yes.
being gassed, by the way, by you people.
Yes.
And you turned off
Yes.
their water, their food. You had
Yeah.
no one in contact with them. So they were in there for 6 days. Think about that, for 6
Jesus
days.
Christ.
I mean, but they noticed like that little kindnesses made them feel more comfortable. So like Ollson gave Christine his jacket because she was shivering. So he gave her his like hoodie. The guy, Sven, they said to him, look, if we have to shoot you, because I promise you, I'll just shoot you at your leg, but I'll like just nick you. Like just, and he was actually like, oh, that's really nice. He doesn't want to kill me. He actually, you go nutty. You go nutty. I mean, the one woman said, like, yeah, they really cared about I was a mother, and they felt bad about that, and they wanted to make sure. But she goes, they didn't want to send her out there because they didn't want her to get shot and killed.
Also, like, they are. It's so funny because they're like, look, we just want our money and we don't want to hurt you. And the cops are like, we're going to hurt all of you. We don't care.
Yeah. We don't give a fuck.
I mean, no wonder that they act the way they act.
Right.
When they come out of there. It makes sense to me, to be honest.
The thing is that they do not. Nils Bergeron is the person that, I think it's Nils or Niles, but anyway, he's a criminologist and a psychologist. Never talked to Christine, by the way. Never talked to any of these people. But he all of a sudden was jumping around on the TV, and it's just like in Die Hard when they had that hostage book that they were talking about,
Yes.
Helsinki Syndrome.
Yes.
This guy's doing the same thing. And he's saying, like, he barely mentioning Sven. He's just like, oh, these women just fell in love with their captors because they were helpless. That's what captives do. They get helpless, so they fall in love. And it's very reductive. It's really, yeah. But that was his thing.
Maybe Christine did, but not all of them.
They had a thing. So they eventually, they go to jail. Olofsson thinks, oh, well, they brought me in to help out. So they're now going to, let me out of prison. And they're like,
Right.
no, you were stealing money. You were going to do that anyway. So they put him back in prison. Eventually, he was convicted of being part of the kidnapping, but it was overturned. Mm-hmm. Jan Ollson went to prison for a few years. They're both out by the 80s. It's not very long. Yeah. And he actually says that he regrets what he did and how he treated people. He committed more crimes, and then he kind of went on the straight and narrow. He gets married, has a kid, runs a grocery store.
Okay.
Right. Clark is like fucking around once in a while. Sometimes he's in jail, sometimes he's not in jail. Been married a few times, has like 6 kids.
Damn.
He's interviewed by Phoebe Judge for Criminal. Remember that podcast?
Yes.
He could charm the pants off anybody, I think. It's just when you hear him talk, because he's so candid and so just like, yeah, that's what I did.
Charm the pants off Christine.
He certainly did. They had a fling a few years after it all happened. Like they all kept in touch.
Fascinating.
Yes. So Christine's whole thing, and by the way, all of the victims, and they are the true victims here, they all had varying levels of PTSD after this happens. And of course you would. And of course you would. But a couple of them stayed at the bank and worked there until they were retired.
That's bananas to me.
Right. Same to me. I wouldn't want anything to do with it. But, some people adapt in certain ways. And one of them just said, like, I had to do it. I had to just show up and keep, you know what I mean? Just like make me feel normal. Christine became a therapist, and she helps with marriage counseling and couples therapy. Look, she's been through some shit. I would listen to her.
Yeah. I guess that's true. She's seen some shit.
She's seen some shit. And at first, she was so infuriated by the Stockholm Syndrome because she's just like, that's not what I had. She goes, first of all, syndrome indicates that it's a sickness. And she said, we weren't sick. We were people that were in a state of fear. We learned how to manage our fear. And that's smart. And that shows resiliency. And that shows competency. And it's always and she's saying, like, a lot of this is just, it's a way of making women seem more helpless and men seem less guilty of what they're doing.
Interesting.
And this is like a syndrome that it's never been officially entered into as a diagnosis. There's no treatment for it. There's a million reasons why people stay with abusers. There's people who grow up in homes like that. And I know people like they grew up, we've done creep sessions. We've talked about people who grew up in terrible homes and then defend their parents because relationships are complicated.
Exactly. We know everybody knows probably more than one person who does these things. And now, by the way, I would love to see the Netflix show where Christine works as a therapist.
So she gets in touch with a guy.
Her just telling women, like, it's not like he's holding you hostage in a bank. Leave him. Every episode ends like,
will he give you his hoodie when you need it? Then fuck him. She gets in touch. A guy named, like I said, Dr. Alan Wade that I mentioned before. He becomes friendly with her, and he does these speeches, and it's all about dealing with people in trauma and how do we really handle PTSD and what are the best avenues. And basically, in conclusion, just bringing it in for a landing. I mean, that's what Stockholm Syndrome is. That's the reason that the whole thing was made up. It's not what you think. They didn't fall in love with their captors, except for Christine. But
maybe Christine.
Maybe she did. But it was more about they were just trying to survive a really gnarly situation. And it's so wild to read. Like, so I said, a year later, I'll show you something. This is the New Yorker article.
Oh, jeez. It's so... What she's holding up to me looks like a book.
It's like 60 pages printed out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a year later, you can have some perspective on what happened to you. And they were, people, they had cops that flew all over the world to Stockholm to ask them how they managed so well because nobody died, Sonia. So the cops were considered heroes because no one died. And Christine's like, they almost had us killed. Like, they never thought about our safety. They never really cared about it. Nowadays, they admit they fucked up. And it's like, you wouldn't do any of these things that they did.
This is fascinating. Like, the whole idea of Stockholm Syndrome came from the fact that these cops were so shitty and negligent.
Right.
That these people basically had no choice but to side with the people that were holding them hostage in order to stay alive.
These people
and then
were
we label it something like that.
Yeah. They were all of them more afraid of the police than they were of their captors because the police were armed to the fucking teeth, were shooting at anything at any moment, were gassing them, were, pulling holes in the ceiling and shooting in. Just unbelievable.
That's bananas.
Anyway, that's our story this week. That's Stockholm Syndrome, and I think it's bullshit.
It is bullshit. Good job, Margot.
Thank you.
Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you know who Jaycee Lee Dugard is?
I believe I do because she was from the Bay Area.
Yes, this is a very local case here. So it's always like on the tip of my brain. We all know this one. So in 1991, in Lake Tahoe, like the Lake Tahoe area, this 11-year-old girl, Jaycee Lee Dugard, was kidnapped by this couple, Philip and Nancy Gardio, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know. Fuck them. I don't have to pronounce their names right. Anyway, he was, by the way, a registered sex offender. He had kidnapped and raped a woman in 1976. So they actually lived in this like.
Should we do a trigger warning?
Yes. You know what?
Yeah,
I'm not going to get like. I don't want to. Yes, there's a lot of sex abuse here. There's rape of children. So please take care of yourselves. I'm not going to go into the details because it's fucked up. And if you want to read about, there's like so many articles. She's written books. We're going to get into it. But so this couple, the kidnappers, the Guerreros or whatever the fuck their names are, lived in this unincorporated area of Antioch in California in the Bay Area. It's like East Bay for people who are wondering. So it's like you go like
East Oakland.
Past Oakland, past Walnut Creek, out there a little bit further, you got Antioch. So, and their house, like in the back of their house, in their backyard, they had these like tents and sheds. And they took this 11-year-old girl and they put her out in this shed. It's soundproofed. They handcuffed her. She was naked. It's awful. They told her if she tried to escape, like they had these attack dogs that would rip her up. And she was obviously terrified. And he raped her repeatedly. And he was like addicted to meth. And he would like go on like crazy runs. He called them runs on his high, right? And he would just do these horrible things. So by 13, she's pregnant.
Oh God.
It's awful. And she learned about like sex and pregnancy from watching TV. They let her have a TV, and that's how she figured that's how she prepared for this. She didn't go to a hospital. She had these babies here, like in this fucking shed or whatever. It's so awful. So awful. So this happened. So it happened. She had 2 kids there. Children referred to the kidnappers as mom and dad, and they believed that Jaycee was their older sister.
Right.
And the kidnappers also asked her to adopt a new name. So she didn't go by Jaycee anymore. She went by Alyssa. So, and they constantly lied to Jaycee. Like they just, she didn't, at a certain point, she felt like, why would she try to escape? Like, no one's looking for her.
Right.
And if she tried to escape, they're going to kill her and bring her back, and she's just going to be more punished. Years later, and by the way, there was a massive manhunt to find her.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was on America's Most Wanted, posters everywhere. They really, really, really looked for this girl. Will make you so angry when you read about the story or all the missed opportunities to rescue her. Like, this man was on parole. Parole's officers came to his fucking house. She's there in the house. And they don't see anything. They don't look around. They just talk to him and fucking leave. And she's there. It's awful. It'll drive you nuts. Anyway, this fucking creep decides that like he's come up with a cure for like his quote unquote sex addiction and his meth addiction, and he wants to give a talk about it at the UC Berkeley campus. So he shows up at this campus and talks to somebody about how can he get a permit to speak on the campus. The campus police were like, and he showed up and he had 2 like children with him. He had younger people with him, and they were like, that's weird. They got a weird vibe from him. Surprise. So they did a background check on him and saw that he had been convicted of a sex crime. And so they contacted like the police, which then contacted his parole officer. They went to visit like his house, or they called him and he came in to the police station in Concord, my hometown, by the way. And he brought with him the kids and Jaycee, like then going by Alyssa. And like they questioned him, they questioned her, and she was like, oh, my name's Alyssa. Like, these are my sisters, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, like, this creep confesses to what he's done. And then the police figure out who she is and that she's Jaycee Dugard, and that it turns out these are not her sisters, these are her children.
What year was this?
By then, it was 2009.
Yeah, I remember that.
I wrote it down here because I want to make it clear. I believe she was in there for like, it was like 18 years or something.
God.
Yes. She lived in the shed in the backyard for 18 years. She had 2 daughters. By the time they were rescued, the 2 daughters were 14 and 17.
Oh.
This is all they've known, by the way.
Did they go to school? No, right? They didn't go to school?
No, she homeschooled them. She watched TV and tried to like teach these children the best she could, which, by the way, if you've seen the movie Room, there's a lot of stuff that movie.
I can't watch it again. I've seen it once.
I saw it once and thought it was amazing. It's a punch in the gut. It wrecked me. And there are definitely things in this case that are in that movie, which is based on a book, but not her book. Anyway, I wanted to point out that 3 weeks after she was rescued, Jaycee asked for the pets that were in the home.
Aww.
Because she wanted to make sure that they were being taken care of, which I thought was very sweet. Eventually, Philip, that's the fucking creep, he got 431 years in prison. I think that's life. And his wife got 36 years.
That's it?
That's it. Bitch should be in jail for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Fuck her. The Dugard family sued law enforcement. Dugard. Sorry. Did I say Dugard? That's a totally different family.
That's right. I just realized they have the same name.
No, it's Dugard with a D at the end. Dugard. Maybe Dugard is how it's Dugard. They filed a lawsuit against the law enforcement because this dude was a registered sex offender and they had plenty of opportunity to catch him and
never went to the backyard.
Never went to just walk around the house, man. Go out back, take a look. Anyway, she got $20 million for it, which doesn't make up for stolen 18 years of your life. No. But I'm glad she got some money. So the reason I brought her up was because in 2016, she wrote a book. And it's called A Stolen Life, a memoir. And she wrote it as part of her therapy. Like she wrote it with her therapist. And it's about like post-trauma, like family reunification and dealing with what happened to her. And she did an interview with ABC News. And she said this: the phrase Stockholm Syndrome implies that hostages cracked by terror and abuse become affectionate towards their captors, which is degrading. Having my family believe that I was in love with this captor and wanted to stay with him is so far from the truth. It makes me want to throw up. I adapted to survive my circumstance.
Yes.
Which is exactly what we're talking about here. She wasn't in love with this dude. She wasn't stoked to be part of this fucking nightmare family. She was doing what she needed to do to survive. She repeatedly says in interviews, like, this was a survival mechanism that a lot of victims do to survive. Yeah. Like, they do what they need to do. So she wrote this book. After she was rescued, she started animal-assisted therapy, specifically with horses. She wrote
horses are amazing for therapy, by the way. They really are, yeah.
She wrote a second book called Freedom, My Book of Firsts. And then she started something called the Jaycee Foundation, and it's like Jayc Foundation. And it provides support for families that deal with abduction and other losses. So they help families connect with like traditional therapy, but also animal therapy. So if you want like animal therapy or like therapy with horses, they can help you with that. But they also offer training to law enforcement officers so that they can learn from this experience. So they're not just calling it Stockholm Syndrome. They actually do presentations like all over the country, like sharing their ideas to different groups of agencies about like how to handle these kinds of situations. So she not only survived something so fucked up, and she could have just, I don't know, been like, and that's that, and like taking care of herself. She's trying to like pay it forward and help others, which I think is amazing and makes her a fabulous non-creep.
Good job, Sonia. That was a tough story. And I remember I lived in the Bay Area when that happened. And there's a couple, like Michaela Garrett, was that the other one? There was a couple of cases of girls abducted, and
there's and then Polly Klaas up in Petaluma. It was really, really terrible.
I was psyched when they found her, and then let's stop blaming victims for surviving horrible circumstances in the best way they know how.
You can't even imagine. Like, there were so many when this happened. So many people were like, "Why didn't she just blah, blah, blah?" And I was like, "Fuck off!" Like, you don't know. You don't know what she's been through and what you would do in that situation to survive.
Please, I used to co-host a show with another person, and we had a disagreement about this kind of topic, because she would say things like, well, why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't she just fight back? Elizabeth Smart, she even made a comment about her, like, why didn't she just do this? I'm like, you don't have the guts to like quit your job to your boss, right? But you're going to stand up to someone who's been raping you and holds a gun to your fucking head. People will do anything to disassociate from anything bad happening to them. And so any way that they can think of to blame that person, to make them a little more culpable for their circumstances, makes them feel, and people like that fucking suck. I don't talk to that person anymore. I'm like,
I remember seeing so many garbage takes when she was finally found. And I'm at that time, I was like, fuck these people.
I know, same.
My sister read her book. She couldn't fucking wait for the book to come out. My sister read it because she was just so interested in like how that,
and Elizabeth Smart,
how that went down. And Elizabeth Smart. You don't know what you would do to survive.
No, and right. And it's like you're being punished for your competency. Like you've done, you're dealing with the best way you know how to keep yourself sane.
Yes.
And
at this
daughters.
Point, she has children that she is also trying to protect. And I'm like, you will do anything.
Yes.
Anything at that point. And people, like you said, like it's their way of saying, well, it wouldn't happen to me.
Exactly. Because I would have done this or that.
It could happen. Yeah, it's good for you. But that's not what happened here. Too bad.
No, the person that said that to me was somebody that she wanted to quit her job, and she was so scared. She sent an email. And I'm like, just go in the office and say fucking quit. No. But she would, but then like all of a sudden she's like, oh, well, if I were in this situation, I would fight him off, and I blah, blah. Like, you know what you would fucking do? Was she supposed to run away and leave her kids behind?
Yeah, no.
No, with a monster?
No. That's not what you... No. And I know, I'm like, I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. So, like, how would I have the fucking gall to pass judgment on someone about how they handled that situation? And, to your point, your friend that, like, can't even, like, quit her job in person. It's like there's like shit, I don't know, just normal everyday shit that I don't want to deal with because I'm too scared to deal with it. And then you put me in a life or death situation and think I'm going to be brave. Doubtful.
But even if you, or like Christine,
maybe this is the brave option. What she's doing.
What she's doing is hugely brave. She's keeping herself alive, and she's taking care of those kids.
Those kids, exactly.
Christine, I was going to just say, like, Enmark, a couple, because she was like they said, she wouldn't lay back on that gurney. She wouldn't do anything, and the cop said, she's strangely fresh and alert. And it's like,
what's that supposed to mean?
Because they wanted her to be all freaked out and crying and screaming. So to them, it's like, well, there's something wrong with her. Like, you can't kidnap a person like that. They're already whatever. It's so stupid.
You have
sexist.
To act the way You have to act the way I want you to act, or there's something wrong with you.
Right. And it's bullshit.
Fuck these people.
That's why I love doing the show. Because we do stuff like this. I'm like, grrr. Margot smash.
You did a really good job on this one. This is really good. I didn't know any of this story, so.
Well, thank you. I should say that the show Clark is on Netflix. Episode 4 is about the robbery in particular, because this guy has a whole fucking life of stuff going on. It's a little intense.
I'm gonna wait for the romantic comedy version.
I think so. The Lifetime version, the holiday version. There also was a movie called Stockholm starring Ethan Hawke.
Love in the Vault. Love in the Vault. Can't wait.
He's a robber. She's a bank teller. They're in love.
Sparks fly. Love in the Vault. Coming this fall.
Ethan Hawke started a movie called Stockholm. There's been a couple of movies in Sweden about it. I should say the movie Clark in America, it's dubbed English, which is I always find very strange to watch. Yeah.
I would just give me subtitles. This is fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I'll be totally fine. Okay. If you like the sound of our voices, and by golly, why wouldn't you at this point? We also co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies of all kinds, genres, and decades. Sonia, what are we covering next?
It's time for our Oscars episode, and we, in the past, have done bad Oscar winners. So we've done like Crash and we've done American Beauty. And we decided maybe we'd like to do a movie that's actually really good. So we're going to talk about The French Connection from 1971, which I haven't seen in a long time. So I'm really looking forward to this rewatch. And I know it has one of the best car chases of all time. So I'm excited.
It's 1971 New York. It's Gene Hackman at his Gene Hackmaniest. It's Ray Scheider. It's really, really good. It's going to be so much fun. And I just looked at the top 40 for 1971, the top 10 of that week, and it's pretty freaking great. So
we've never done a movie from 71 before. It's going to be real good. And if y'all love anti-hero cop shows and you haven't seen The French Connection, you should watch The French Connection.
Yeah, Popeye Doyle is not a hero. Let's just be clear.
Yeah, and so if you like shit like The Wire or The Shield or even NYPD Blue, you should watch The French Connection. It's going to click for you. Or even The Sopranos. It'll click for you. It's going to work.
Please reach out to us at all the social media places that I mentioned before for your suggestions for creeps and for non-creeps. We love it when you use the Annie Potts GIF. We got one from Ghostbusters, but you be clever. You do you. You figure out how you want to reach out to us. Yeah. Once again, our email is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Please email us if you'd like some stickers. Please send along your address. That makes it a lot easier for me to get them to you.
I mean, we could email you the stickers, but they don't stick very well.
Nah, they're not that cool that way. Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram and the TikTok. Where can people find you, Margot?
On Twitter, you can find me at Brooklyn Margot. On Instagram, I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. And I am on the TikTok at Margot Donahue. And I've got some fun clips there. And a couple of them are of The French Connection. Check it out.
Nice.
All right, everyone. In the meantime, be kind, stay safe. Don't be a creep.
Be a creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.